Hello everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel AgriAddict. As you all know, we are providing online courses for 4 major subject groups including plant science, physical science, agronomy and entomology, and complete mock test bundle for 6 major subject groups including plant science, physical science, agronomy, entomology, horticulture as well as social sciences, which will be really helpful for your competitive examinations preparations including ICAR, JRF, SRF, CUET, IBPS and other agriculture related examinations. Let's make the concept simpler with AgriAddict platform. Today we will be dealing with the concept of consumer behavior, that is law of diminishing marginal utility and law of equimarginal utility. If you really like our content, please like, comment, share and subscribe our YouTube channel AgriAddict. I am your mentor Ajay Androsoi. I have done my UG from College of Agriculture Padanakkad, Kerala Agricultural University. I did my masters in the subject of agricultural economics from College of Agriculture Rajendra Nagar, PJTSIO Hyderabad, and currently I am pursuing my PhD in Indian Agriculture Research Institute, New Delhi. In the year of 2021, I have secured All India rank 27th in the ICAR JRF examination, and in the year of 2023, I have secured All India rank 4th in the ICAR SRF examination, and in the same year, I have qualified ISRB net also. So while analyzing the consumer behavior, there are two main approaches. First one is cardinal approach and second one is ordinal approach. The basic difference between these approaches are like in cardinal approach, the utility can be measured. As you recall, utility is one of the basic concept in microeconomics as well as analyzing the consumer behavior. So utility is nothing but the want satisfying power of a commodity. So in cardinal approach, the assumption is that the utility or the satisfaction which is caused by a commodity can be measured, while in ordinal approach it cannot be measured. Cardinal approach was proposed by Alfred Marshall. So Alfred Marshall proposed cardinal approach. Therefore, cardinal approach or the utility analysis is also known as the Marshallian approach. I hope you remember Alfred Marshall was the proposer or proposed the welfare definition of economics. So cardinal approach is the utility analysis, or it is also known as the Marshallian approach, through which utility can be measured. While in ordinal approach, utility cannot be measured and it uses the indifference techniques. So we will be dealing the ordinal approach later. We are going in depth to the cardinal approach today to understand the consumer behavior. So let me give you a situation. I and my grandma is going to a shop and she is offering me orange juice. So first she offered me a Tetra Pak. I was so happy and I was let me give you a situation. I and my grandma is going to a fruit shop. So she is offering me an orange juice Tetra Pak and I was so happy about that, and I was so satisfied in the first glass. But what she did was like, soon after that she offered me another Tetra Pak to me, and I was like, okay, I had it. What if she is offering me a third Tetra Pak? Will the satisfaction level I had while I was consuming the first Tetra Pak will be the same when I am consuming the third one also? It will be decreasing, right? So continuously consuming a product means in the first, while we are consuming the first commodity, we will be totally satisfied, or our satisfaction level will be really high. But while we are consuming the same product one after the other, the satisfaction level which is uh, derived by consuming that commodity is probably going to decrease for everyone, right? So universally this is acceptable too, whatever it may be. Let it be orange juice, let it be a apple, let it be whatever food products, let it be whatever amenities that we are using, continuously if we are using it, the satisfaction level in the additional commodity that we are consuming will be decreasing. What if continuously I am consuming like 10 or 20 packets in a row? My stomach will be having some problem, right? Or I will be having a vomiting tendency. So this is the situation. So I was the consumer and I was consuming continuously the identical product, and what happened was like, when I am consuming the product in a continuous fashion, I am getting lesser and lesser satisfaction. This is nothing but the law of diminishing marginal utility explains. So law of diminishing marginal utility was given by Alfred Marshall. So there was a famous statistician called H.H. Gosen. H.H. Gosen formulated the law of diminishing marginal utility for the first time, but he didn't stated it as a law. So Alfred Marshall modified it, and Alfred Marshall was is the proposer of this law of diminishing marginal utility. Since it was formulated by H.H. Gosen, it is also known as Gosen's first law. So what is the condition here? Resources are unlimited with the consumer, right? So my grandma was continuously giving me, and she was not at all concerned about her budget or something like that. So she was having unlimited resources, and that thus she can provide unlimited quantity of the same commodity. So what is the statement of law of diminishing marginal utility? Additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase of his or her stock of a commodity brings lesser and lesser utility. What was the utility level I was having when I was consuming the first Tetra Pak? I was having higher utility, right? But one after the other, when I am consuming it continuously, the additional satisfaction that derived by me while I am consuming the same commodity will be bringing me lesser and lesser utility. So there are two important terms here. First one is marginal utility, and second one is total utility. What is marginal utility? Marginal utility is nothing but the additional satisfaction derived by an individual by consumption of an extra unit of commodity. Let me consume the first commodity first, and what is the additional satisfaction when I am consuming the second commodity, or when I am consuming the second Tetra Pak? What was the additional satisfaction I derived from consuming that additional quantity? That is given by marginal utility. Then what is the total utility? Total utility is nothing but the total satisfaction. It is the sum of the all marginal utilities, right? Marginal utility is nothing but the additional satisfaction corresponding to that unit of commodity, and total utility is nothing but if I have consumed 4 units of commodities, then what is the total utility, or sum of the marginal utilities corresponding to each commodity will be given by the total utility. So total utility is the total satisfaction of a consumer derives from the consumption of various unit of commodities. I hope the concept is clear. So there are some assumptions of the law of diminishing marginal utility. First one is homogeneity of the units that are consumed. So what was our scenario? That we were consuming the identical orange Tetra Paks continuously, right? What if I am consuming a Coca-Cola after 3 or 4 Tetra Paks? The utility level I derived will be totally different, right? So in order to work this law of diminishing marginal utility, the homogeneity of the units of commodity that I am consuming should be equal. Okay, the homogeneity should be ensured. And the second one is consumption of the unit of the commodities should be continuous without interval. What if I am consuming 3 or 4 Tetra Paks continuously, and I am taking a break? I will be roaming around the market, and when I am coming back, I will be feeling really real thirst. So that when the fourth unit, when I am consuming, what happens? The utility level I will be I am having will be much higher than that of the previous commodity I was having, because all three units I was consuming continuously, right? And the fourth one was after an interval. So in order to this law of diminishing marginal utility works only if the consumption of the unit of the commodities when consumed in a continuous fashion. And the third one is, during this particular activity of consumption, it is also assumed that the taste, preferences, income, everything should be remains unchanged, or else ceteris paribus. So while I am consuming, my taste, preference, nothing should be changed. Everything has to be in a constant manner. So these are the basic assumptions of law of diminishing marginal utility. And another one important assumption of the cardinal utility approach is also applies to law of diminishing marginal utility. That is, marginal utility of money should be constant throughout the process. Whenever throughout the consumption process, the marginal utility of money that we are spending should be constant. So these are the basic assumptions of law of diminishing marginal utility. So I am restating again what is marginal utility and what is total utility. Marginal utility is nothing but the additional utility derived by an individual by the consumption of one more unit of the commodity, and total utility is nothing but the sum of the amount of satisfaction I derived from the consumption of different units of the utilities. Suppose I am consuming continuous, like I am consuming mangoes in a continuous fashion. So 0 mangoes, I am not consuming any mango, so the total utility will be 0 and the marginal utilities also will be 0. So I am consuming the first unit of mango. What is my total utility? 20, and that was my first unit of consumption, therefore the marginal utility is also 20. What about the what is the case when I am consuming the second unit of mango in a continuous fashion? I have already gained 20, and after consumption of 2 mangoes, 36 is my total utility. So the additional satisfaction or the marginal utility derived from consuming the second unit of mango can be obtained by taking the difference of the utility that I gained from second mango as well as the first mango. So the difference is 20 minus 36 minus 20, that is 16. So while consuming the additional unit, that is while I am consuming the second mango, the additional satisfaction I got is 16 utils. Utils was nothing but the imaginary unit that Alfred Marshall proposed in order to measure the utility. We have already discussed that in the cardinal approach the utility is assumed to be measurable, and how we can measure the satisfaction level that we are having. When I am having a mango, I can say that I have much more satisfaction in the first commodity than in the second commodity, but in order to quantify that, an imaginary unit was proposed by Alfred Marshall, and that was utils. That's how we are expressing the utility in terms of utils, in terms of your total utility as well as marginal utility, while explaining this law of diminishing marginal utility. So we have consumed the second unit of mango, and while we are consuming the third unit of mango, the total utility stands at 48. So after consuming 3 mangoes in a row, my total utility is 48. And what is the marginal utility when I am consuming the third mango, or the additional satisfaction I derived from the third unit of mango is nothing but the difference between total utility of the third mango as well as total utility while I am consuming the second mango, that is 48 minus 36, which is nothing but 12. So continuously consuming, and in the fifth level my total utility was maximum, that is 60, and the marginal utility was corresponding to 4. What if I am continuously consuming it again? So after 5th unit I am consuming the 6th unit of mango, and here what happens, the total utility remains unchanged. So when I was consuming the 5th unit of mango, the total utility was 60, and even if I am consuming another unit of mango extra, the total utility seems 60, which is nothing but implies that the marginal utility derived from this 6th unit was 0. So I didn't get any additional satisfaction when I was consuming the 6th unit of mango. What if again I was consuming it? My total utility was maximized, and my stomach was full. Again I was forced to eat the mango. So I am going for the 7th unit. What happens here? My total utility declines. From the first mango, the total utility was increasing, and at a point, even if I increased my consumption from with respect to 1 unit, my total utility was not changing, and the marginal utility derived was 0. But again, after the point of saturation, when I am forcing myself to continue the same again, my total utility is going to decrease. So and also remarkable, it has to be mentioned that the marginal utility here is like 56 minus 60, that is there occurs a negative utility, that is I don't want it but still I want to consume it, therefore I will be having dissatisfaction. So it will be implied by the negative utility. So this is what is happening while we are consuming a product in a continuous fashion. The total utility is increasing to a point, and after that it declines. Or else the marginal utility, what is happening to the marginal utility? See, from the first unit it was the highest satisfaction was given by the first unit, right? Then again it was decreasing to 16, to 12, to 8, to 4, and at the point of saturation, when the total utility was maximum, the marginal utility was 0. And after that, when I am pushing myself to consume the same again, what happens to the marginal utility? It is going to negative value, or it decreases below 0. So I am restating the same table in a form of graphical form. As we all know, in the x-axis we are explaining the unit of goods that we are consuming in a continuous fashion. And in the first figure, the y-axis consists of the total utility, and in the second figure, the y-axis consists of the marginal utility. As we all know, in the first unit, the total utility was increasing, and while continuously consuming it till the fifth unit, the total utility was increasing. And when was the marginal utility was highest? It was in my first commodity, right? Because I was so hungry, and that was the first commodity I was consuming, or the first mango that I was consuming, so it was having the highest marginal utility. And soon after that, when I am consuming the mango one after the other, even though when the marginal utility was increasing, the total utility was increasing, the marginal utility was decreasing. And this can be considered as the point of satiation, or the point of satisfaction, right? Where is the point of satisfaction lies? That is the point where total utility is maximum, or else we can say that marginal utility is 0. So when marginal utility is 0, or when the total utility is maximum, we will be totally satisfied. And what happens after that point? Our total utility starts to decrease, right? See, after the 6th unit of consumption, what is happening here? See, it is decreasing, the total utility is decreasing, or the marginal utility goes below the x-axis, or the value of the marginal utility becomes negative. Marginal utility is maximum at the beginning of the consumption, and marginal utility is decreasing throughout the consumption process, which is nothing but stated by the law of diminishing marginal utility. When we are having the stock in additional quantity, the marginal utility derived from each additional quantity will be declining throughout the process. That is nothing but the law of diminishing marginal utility. So the point of maximum satisfaction, or the point of satiation, is where the total utility is maximum, or the marginal utility is 0. And what happens after the point of satiation? Marginal utility is negative. That is called dissatisfaction. That is, I will be having some nausea, vomiting tendency, or stomach trouble, right? So connect the theory with some practical circumstances so that it will be really easy to learn economics. So what is the practical importance of LDMU? Actually, the law of demand that we have discussed in the previous class, the law of substitution, and these laws are having the base of these laws are from law of diminishing marginal utility. And when this law of diminishing marginal utility was applied in terms of money, the theory of taxation and public expenditure was formulated by Alfred Marshall. So as we progress in the concepts of microeconomics, much of the concepts are having a backup or base from this law of diminishing marginal utility. And of course, as we have already seen, as we are proposing some assumptions regarding this law of diminishing marginal utility, there are some exceptions also. In the case of misers, the law of diminishing marginal utility may not work, because they are reluctant to spend the money. Even if they are having unlimited resources, they will be reluctant to spend the money, so they might stop the consumption level at second or third quantity, or second or third unit of the consumption. So for misers it won't work. And those persons who have drinking, gambling habits, etc., it might not work, because the more they drink, or the more they gamble, they'll get a certain high. So the more they are having or consuming it, the utility level they are having will be increased. So law of diminishing marginal utility will not work for the persons who are having this drinking, gambling habits, etc. What happens to the persons who enjoys their hobbies? Suppose if I am loving, if I am a person who is fond of reading, the more I read, the more happiness I will be getting, right? Or I will be more satisfied. So in case of hobbies also, the law of diminishing marginal utility might not work. So these are the exceptions of this law of diminishing marginal utility. So I think the concepts is clear for you guys regarding this law of diminishing marginal utility. Now we are moving to another situation. My grandma is giving me some 500 rupees and asking me to go to the market and purchase 3 commodities, that is potato, tomato, and ridge guard. And she is asking me, you can allocate the money as you wish. So I have 500 rupees, I have to allocate among these 3 commodities. How I will allocate it? I can say, suppose there are some, like we are assuming it, I will be allocating 200 rupees for potato and 100 rupees for tomato, and again 200 rupees for ridge guard. That is one possibility, right? Or else I can spend my entire commodity, entire rupee, entire money or entire budget for this potato, and then 0 will be allocated for tomato and ridge guard. Likewise, there are infinite possibilities, right? Or else I can buy only tomato, or else I can buy only ridge guard, or else different proportion of money I can give for this potato, tomato and ridge guard. So I am totally confused how I should allocate this 500 rupees among these three commodities. So this concept is explained by the second important law of cardinal approach, that is law of equimarginal utility. There are certain assumptions of law of law of equimarginal utility. First one is the consumer behaves rationally. What is a rational consumer do? He will spend more money for the products which is having higher utility, right? If I am having if I am having higher satisfaction for a product, then should I pay more for some commodity which is having less satisfaction? No, then I cannot be considered as a rational consumer. So uh, a consumer should be behave rationally while going to the market, or that is the basic assumption of this law of equimarginal utility. And the second one is he should know full knowledge about the commodities, their attributes, prices, etc. in the market. So we were going to purchase potato, tomato and ridge guard, so I should be aware of the prices, their quality, their attributes, everything. I should have the perfect knowledge regarding the commodities in the market. And the third one is utility is measurable cardinally in terms of utils. That we have already seen this assumption in the law of diminishing marginal utility. And the final assumption is commodities that are chosen are divisible and substitutable. The commodities should be divisible as well as it should be substitutable. Like, see, when I am giving my 500 rupees entirely for potato, then I am substituting potato over tomato and ridge guard. So these are substitutable goods, right? So the commodities that are chosen are divisible and substitutable. These are the assumptions of law of equimarginal utility. And there are some other important terminologies for this law of equimarginal utility. As H.H. Gosen have formulated this law earlier, and it was later developed by Alfred Marshall. This law of diminishing marginal utility as well as law of equimarginal utility was developed by Alfred Marshall only. That's why the cardinal utility approach is also known as Marshallian analysis or Marshallian approach. And since Gosen was formulated this law for the first time, it is also known as Gosen's second law. So law of diminishing marginal utility is Gosen's first law, law of equimarginal utility is Gosen's second law. Or it is also known as law of indifference, or law of maximum satisfaction, or principle of proportion, or law of opportunity cost. These are some synonyms of the same law. So what was the case while we were discussing law of diminishing marginal utility? There we had infinite resources, right? Our grandma was able to give whatever we want. So here what happens, we are constrained with some amount of resources. So resources are limited here. Grandma has given me only 500 rupees. So I have some resource constraint. So with this limited resource, I have to spend all these resources in such a way that how we have to allocate this resource in the product, that is defined by or that is explained by this law of equimarginal utility. So if a person has a thing that is nothing but the resources which can put into several uses, he or she will distribute between those uses in such a way that it has the same marginal utility in all. So how I will be allocating my 500 rupees? I will be allocating in these three products in such a way that I will be deriving equal marginal utility from each of the commodities that when I am spending my money. So consumer substitutes the goods having greater utility for those which is having lesser utility. If I am having higher utility for potato for the first time, then I'll be spending my money initially on potato, and once my satisfaction level for potato is over and then comes the tomato, then I'll be giving that much money for purchasing tomato. So the consumer substitutes for the goods having greater utility for those which is having lesser utility, and this process is continued till the marginal utility of commodities purchased are equalized. So this is the statement of law of equimarginal utility. So this is the mathematical formula of law of equimarginal utility, that is marginal utility of x divided by price of x is equal to marginal utility of y divided by price of y is equal to marginal utility of z divided by price of z, which should be equal to a constant. That is the marginal utility derived from each commodity should be equal to in such a way that we will be allocating our resources. That is explained by law of equal marginal utility. Suppose we are having some 25 rupees. So these are we have considered 3 vegetables, that is potato, tomato and ridge gourd. So if I am consuming this 5 units, if every potato, tomato and ridge gourd is having 5 rupees per number, therefore what if I am consuming potato in a continuous fashion? My marginal utility is depicted here, that is in the first unit I will be having 19 utils, then 16 utils, then 14 utils, then 10 utils and then 5 utils. What about tomato? I'll be having a higher utility than potato, so 20, 22, 21, 20, 16 and 14. And what in the case of ridge gourd, the marginal utility derived from continuously consuming all these 5 units is like 18, 17, 15, 12 and 11. So I have 25 rupees. So I will be having 5 rupee notes. So 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. So the first unit or the first 5 rupee note where I should invest. See, while I am consuming the first commodity, either it will be potato, tomato or ridge gourd, the highest utility I am deriving is from tomato. So where I am investing this first 5 rupee note, it will be in tomato. So so the first rupee is spent already. And what about the next 5 rupee note? If I am going for this potato, the marginal utility is 19. And if I am going for ridge gourd, the marginal utility derived will be 18. But at the same time, if I am investing my second 5 rupee note in consuming tomato itself, my marginal utility will be 21. So where I will be spending my second 5 rupee note? In tomato. So in such a way that the marginal utility should be maximized, but as the commodities are substitutable, we will be allocating our our resources in such a way that we will be substituting the commodities which is having higher utility over lower utility. So my first 5 rupee note is given for tomato, second 5 rupee note is given for again tomato, and the third 5 rupee note is also given for tomato, because 20 utils of satisfaction I am deriving while I am consuming the third unit of tomato. But what if I am consuming if I am giving the fourth unit of my 5 rupee note for tomato? I am just deriving 16 utils of satisfaction. At the same time, I have possibilities of potato and ridge gourd. So the fourth unit I will not be considering for tomato, and the fourth unit will be given for this potato. So 20 to 21, 20, and the next best alternative is potato, and the fourth unit of my 5 rupee note will be given for potato. And where the next? On ridge gourd, right? So the fifth unit will be given for ridge gourd. So I was constrained with the resources, that is 25 rupees, and how I am allocating these resources, whereas the marginal utility derived from each unit of the commodities should be equalized, or else the commodity should be substituted in such a way that the resource will be spent for those commodities which is having higher utility in the first place. So this is how I am spending my 25 rupees among these 3 products. I hope the concept is clear. Coming to the practical importance of law of equal marginal utility. In the case of consumption, as we have already discussed, while I am consuming these 3 vegetables, how I will be allocating my resource where my marginal utility is maximized or equalized while I am consuming all these products. So in the consumption, we have already discussed what is the importance of law of equal marginal utility. What happens in the case of production? If I am a farmer and I am cultivating the same 3 crops, that is tomato, potato as well as ridge gourd, how I will be allocating my land? My land is my resource, right? And I have land constraints, that is my land is fixed and I cannot increase it. So how I will be allocating my land among these 3 vegetables? It should be in such a way that the returns that I am getting from each unit of land should be equalized, right? Or the marginal value product should be equal while I am allocating my land to all these vegetables. So in the production also, in the case of production scenario also, law of equal marginal utility holds significant importance. And what happens in the case of marketing? When I'm, as we have already discussed, when I am going to the market, how I will be allocating my budget? It is totally based on law of equal marginal utility, right? I will be spending much more money for those products which is having higher satisfaction, and I will be substituting over those products which is having lesser satisfaction, and it is explained by law of equimarginal utility. And how in the case of distribution, we have already seen what is distribution of the remuneration that the farmer or the producer is getting. A part will be going for this land, labor, capital and organization in the form of rent, wage, interest and profit. So how this rent, wage and interest is profit will be allocated to this land, labor and capital and organization? It will be based on this law of equimarginal utility, that is the marginal value product that is produced by each of those factors of production, that is land, labor and capital organization, will be determining the proportion of rent and wage or interest and profit which is divided among those factors of production. So in the distribution also practically law of equimarginal utility is having similar importance. And what happens in the case of prices? Suppose if the supply in the market is in a shortfall, or the supply is really less in the market, whether the consumer will be preferring those products which is scarce or those products which is less scarce. The consumer, of course the consumer will be preferring those commodities which is less scarce, right? So what happens when the consumer is demanding those products which is less scarce? Those scarce products prices will be going to decline on the course of time. So in the case of prices also, this law of equimarginal utility holds much importance. So these are the practical importance or the practical significance of law of equimarginal utility. As we have already discussed, there are some limitations for law of equimarginal utility also. First one is influence of expenditure pattern by habit. Even if the consumer is a rational consumer and he has to behave rationally while going to the market, while if he is having a habit of a pattern of habit for consuming a product or buying a product, as the law of diminishing returns is having, as the law of diminishing marginal utility is having, there are some limitations for law of equimarginal utility also. First one is the influence of expenditure pattern by habit. Even the law is stating that the consumer will be allocating the resources in such a way that the marginal utility derived from each of the commodity should be maximized or equalized. There are some exceptions, that if I am habituated in such a way that if I am going to the market, I'll be fixing my budget, that I'll be giving some 200 rupees for purchasing the potato. That is, I by habit I was habituated by this pattern while I am going to the market, and that influence might not be that will be an exception for this law of equimarginal utilities. So the patterns or the habits that we are following also can be can influence to for not proper working of this law of equimarginal utility. The second one is law of indivisibility of the certain goods. As we have already discussed, it was one of the basic assumption of law of equimarginal utility, that is the goods has to be divisible as well as substitutable. So indivisibility of the certain goods can be causing a limitation for this law of equimarginal utility to properly work. And the third one is influence of advertisement. We know that we will be easily convinced or influenced by the ads. So while advertisements are happening, even if the marginal utility that we derive is lesser also, we might be sharing much of the budget even if the satisfaction we derive from the commodity is really less. So the influence of advertisement will be also another limitation for this law of equal marginal utility. And coming to the limitations of this whole cardinal approach, first one is one of the basic assumption upon which cardinal utility approach was like the marginal utility of money should be constant throughout the process. But imagine a situation that if I am having some 10,000 rupees monthly salary, what happens to in the initial days we'll spend the money like anything, right? So towards the end, when my budget is decreasing, like from 10,000 to 9,000, 9,000 to 8,000, and in the last week of the month I will be having only 1,000 rupees. So when I was having 10,000 rupees in the month beginning of the month, I will be spending the money like anything, and when I am left with only 1,000 rupees towards the end of the week, end of the month, how I will be spending the 1,000 rupees? I will be spending in such a way that like each of the penny of this last 1,000 rupees will be deriving satisfaction for me, right? So the marginal utility derived for the money towards the end of this month will be much higher than that of I was having when I was having this 10,000 rupees, right? So the marginal utility cannot be considered as constant, so it is not a realistic assumption, and that is the first limitation of this cardinal approach, that is marginal utility of money would be more when he is left with the less and less money. And the second one is it does not help income and or explains this income and substitution effects. The price effect is splitted into two, that is income effect and substitution effect. We will be dealing income effect and substitution effect in the later classes, and this cardinal approach doesn't give any explanation for this income effect as well as substitution effect. So that's all about today's video. Feel free to comment down the topics that you need explanations from AgriAddict platform, and you can avail the free mock test, and if you are really interested you can avail the complete mock test from the AgriAddict platform, which is available in Play Store, and it is also available in our website. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.